We're recording. Hi, welcome to Queer Conversations. This is week 3. I am the Pride Club president, Matt.
I'm Hannah, I'm the PR manager.
And I'm Aislinn, I'm the secretary.
And this week's topic is negative gender stereotypes and how they affect people in our community.
Yeah.
So, Hannah, if you would like to go first.
Okay, cool. So of course there's always a lot of stereotypes about everything. And there's been some really interesting stereotype stuff going on specifically in the lesbian community, but it does go for basically like all queer women for the most part. There's been a lot of stuff going on about like it's okay to not be a stereotype, it's okay to like not be the lesbian who wears a flannel, it's okay to not be masculine and stuff. And they keep saying that that's all we see. And that's really interesting to me because that's not all I see. For the most part, all I see in media and stuff are the feminine lesbians and stuff. And so we've actually, like, I've seen a lot of people almost going backwards in stereotypes, saying that, like, it's okay to be super feminine and conform to society standards because we don't like those masculine lesbians, we don't like those butches, we don't like those people. Just be feminine and be great. And that's pushing society's stereotypes back onto us. I've been really frustrated with that coming out. Like, I've seen that from so many people I follow, because I follow a lot of lesbian couples on Instagram, and so many of them are just like, we're not a stereotype, this is what a lesbian looks like. And they look like a very feminine type of woman that society would be pleased to see because she has full makeup, wears dresses, has super long hair. They're like, I'm a lesbian too. I'm like, that's awesome, you look like what you want to look like. But there's been a lot of hate recently from our own community onto lesbians who do look stereotypically lesbian, even though we don't even see those stereotypes represented. I don't remember the last time I saw a vaguely masculine lesbian on TV. They're all feminine. And so there's some really interesting stereotypes clashing right now within the community. I've seen it not only in the lesbian community. There's a lot of push right now throughout a lot of communities to be super feminine and wear a lot of makeup and stuff. And I've seen it in some of the non-binary communities because I follow some of those too, because they kind of go together with that. There's been a lot of pushing for a lot of bisexual women, a lot of non-binary people, a lot of lesbians, and even some more male-identified people to only be feminine. And there's been a lot of hate on the masculine side of things. And that's not okay either, because even if those things are stereotypes, they're stereotypes for a reason, that they're what our community started out as and they're what people are comfortable as. They're not just stereotypes. Those are stereotypes that cisgender heterosexual people made because they didn't like them. We need to not hate on our own stereotypes that they made for us. So that's what I wanted to say with that.
Yeah, and so going kind of back to what you said about what you've seen in the media, when I was first starting to figure myself out, all I'd seen for lesbian representation was what you referred to as earlier as ugly butches.
Damn,
And
I wish that were me.
That's all that I had seen at that point, other than Ellen DeGeneres, and so it, and also combined with the negative stigma of being a lesbian, made me not want to tell anyone.
Yeah, that's something I've noticed too. When there are masculine lesbians, they're always shown as gross and like man-like in a misogynistic way. And like that's something that it took me a really long time to figure out, that not a super long time for a lot of people because I still am in my teens, but it took me a long time to figure out that I was exclusively attracted to women, because the only butch lesbian I had ever seen was my cousin, and she's not a good person. She has some issues. And so like the only time I had seen other butch lesbians was kind of what Matt was talking about, of like the bad masculine lesbian representation of being gross and like hitting on straight women when they don't want it and being predatory. And that's the only masculine lesbian representation I ever saw. And I'm like, I can't be a lesbian because I don't find these feminine girls attractive. So I must be pan or whatever because I don't like a lot of feminine girls. So both the disgusting masculine lesbian stereotype and the, oh, all lesbians need to look societally conforming stereotype, they're both bad. It's weird.
Going off of that, I think that any stereotype it is bad in general. But just to touch on problems that lesbians face a lot as well is they're expected to be in almost a heteronormative relationship as well, where what society sees is there should be one more feminine lesbian and one more masculine lesbian in a relationship, which is just perpetuating the stereotypes of, heteronormative relationships. And like, you're kind of in a relationship like that, which definitely isn't a bad thing, but you embrace it not as one of you is the man and one of you is the woman.
One second, I can't hear you right now, Aislinn. Everything is frozen and I can't hear anybody. Cool. Oh, my internet connection is screwed up. Awesome. Cool.
I can still hear you though.
Yeah. I can hear. It's Aislinn who's like.
Oh.
My mic is fine.
I can hear you now. All right, continue. Sorry.
So like you're in a relationship where one of you is more masculine and one of you is more feminine, but you don't embrace it as one of you is the man and one of you is the woman, which is how society sees a lot of lesbian relationships. One of you has to be the quote unquote man, so more masculine, has to be the quote unquote woman, which is in reality not what lesbian relationships are. You're both women, which is what makes
that's the point.
And so there can be relationships between two more feminine people, two more masculine people, or two more androgynous people, as well as one more masculine and one more feminine. Being a lesbian is a complete spectrum of both gender representation and emotional representation. And what you see in TV, like you were saying, is like there's very negative connotation that comes with lesbian relationships because of TV still trying to make them more heteronormative. Where
something Joy just sent me. She said another big reason that especially lesbians on TV are normally very feminine, and most of the relationships I've seen on TV are two feminine women. It's a very big part of it is so men can see themselves fitting into the relationship. They can see the lesbian couple as their nice little three-way because they're both masculine, they both appeal to men. And oh yeah, sorry, they're both feminine words. They're both feminine, so men are just like, ooh, I can get down with that. And the funniest thing is that most feminine lesbians I know, not most that I see, but most people that I know, aren't even like normally feminine. Like I'm feminine, but I don't look like something a man would want because I'm lesbian feminine, not societally feminine. So that's just something else that's really important, that like unfortunately all of the like gross porn and stuff, that's a big reason why a lot of lesbians are just shown to basically look like straight girls who kiss other girls.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, women are fetishized enough by men, and I mean men are fetishized at some point as well. But women are very fetishized by men, and imagine that times two. And that's what most lesbian couples face, is that you're walking down the street and you get catcalled, both of you, by some random man who thinks that he can intrude in your relationship, which is not the way things work. And very fortunately.
Yeah, and kind of bridging off of that fetishization, it is a two-way street, because lots of straight guys like to watch lesbians, and lots of straight girls like to watch gay guys, and
Yeah,
it really is a two-way street.
I had that problem a lot in middle school, and once I realized it, I was like, ooh, I wish I hadn't done that. That's gross. But I still knew people up until my senior year of high school. Even somebody who identified as a lesbian was still into all of this yaoi stuff. And I'm like, that's not okay either. Yeah, it's it's so common because everybody in the community is fetishized. It's not super common that cishet men are fetishized from what I've seen, but yeah, gay men are still so like, ooh, the gay best friend and stuff. Like, that's not okay either.
Yeah,
And it's especially not okay when people go up to homosexual couples in public and they're like, oh, it's real life yaoi or yuri, and it's like, that's not okay.
Gross.
Yeah.
That is one of the most disgusting things that you can do.
As somebody who's really ingrained in a lot of nerdy communities, which the both of you are as well, not to out you, but I know a lot of people when I go to cons, people will be dressed up as characters from even like haiku. I think that's how you say it. I'm not sure. Hayaku. I don't know.
I think it's haiku.
You and people will fetishize those cosplayers because they think that it's okay because they're dressing from that show. And that's not what this is about, but it's the same thing that like even people who are straight dressed as these characters are being fetishized just for the fact that these characters are gay. It's ingrained in every portion of our society, and a lot of people think that gay men aren't fetishized at all when in fact they are, and it's been a problem for many years, and people just push it under the rug because it's not the biggest problem the community faces. Our faces is all of us face fetishization, whether you're trans, lesbian, gay, even non-binary people face a lot of it.
Oh yeah.
But it's not the biggest problem we face, so it's often not spoken about. Because, you know, if somebody comes up to you and is like, oh, I'd like to watch a porn of you, that's not as scary as being attacked by that same person. So you're going to ignore it and not say anything so that you don't get attacked. So people don't confront people who act like we're a fetish, because it's better to be safe than fight for our right.
Yeah. And to like another way that I feel like gay men are stereotyped and stuff a lot, because for a long time gay men were pretty much the only people seen in the community. But like they're still so stereotyped because like there's the gay voice like, hey no, me, me, me. And people always do that, and I'm like, could you not? Yeah, some gay people talk like that. Good for them, but that doesn't mean you need to mock them with the gay voice. And that's one of the biggest stereotypes about gay men that I hear almost on a daily basis now.
Well, and in addition to that, a lot of trans guys have that gay man voice because that's I don't know why it's more common with gay men, but it is. And but a lot of trans guys have it because they take testosterone to lower their voice, and they feminine people, so female assigned people speak at higher ranges and male assigned people speak at lower ranges because their voice lowered and they had time to train their voice to speak lower. But taking testosterone lowers your voice more quickly than natural male puberty. So a lot of trans guys don't have time to train their voice, and they have to do voice training to lower it. So, for example, my boyfriend has a slightly higher voice because he hasn't done voice training for that, and that's fine. That's your decision.
Yeah. Well, it's just there are so many negative stereotypes in our community. It's really hard to know where to start. But I think that we're focusing on gender at this point, right? Yeah. So maybe something to touch down on is how non-binary people, I have to think of words now, trying to keep us back on track. So non-binary people are deemed, I guess, not real is a big problem in our community and outside, is that they're just unsure or something like that. Is I see a lot of non-binary people, they have to fight every day of their lives just to be deemed
Just
that
to be included with regular things.
exactly. And there's a lot of gatekeeping in our own community when it comes to non-binary and agender and pretty much any non-conforming gender, including trans people. There's a lot of gay men and lesbians that say, well, a trans woman can't be a lesbian.
That's
A trans
so incorrect.
gay, because and it is incorrect. And so maybe touching a little bit on gatekeeping is a really good idea at this point, because gender, there's so much gatekeeping in our community, and it's just so tragic because everybody should be accepted into our community with reason. I do have some people that I'm like maps.
I was just gonna say that, like pedophiles,
Like pedophiles, they don't exist to me. They might as well not exist.
That is not gatekeeping. That is keeping the people within our community safe.
Yeah.
We have a lot of younger people within our community, actually. A lot of teenage.
Most of our community is younger because a lot of the older people in our community died during the AIDS crisis or was killed.
Yep.
So we have to protect the younger people in our community. As adults, it is our job to protect these younger people. So that's why we don't allow maps into our community.
Yeah.
But a lot of these younger people are experimenting with gender, and if we continue to gatekeep, we're just going to be as bad as our parents. And who wants that?
Yeah, and some things like I've seen a lot with non-binary people is that a lot of people, they'll call them non-binary, but in their heads they're really thinking, oh, you're feminine, so you're a girl non-binary, and oh, you're masculine, you're a boy non-binary. For some people that's semi-true. There are people who are male aligned and female aligned, or feminine aligned and masculine aligned, which are very different things. You can identify
demi boy and demi girl, because I identify as male aligned but non-binary.
And that would be the only time I've been called, or like I've seen it as gatekeeping, but it's not actually gatekeeping. It's just staying true to the word. If you're a lesbian and you're dating a male-aligned non-binary person, you're not a lesbian, because that's not anyways, that's a whole different thing. But I've seen that a lot where just like a big stereotype. A big stereotype that I see with non-binary people is that you have to be completely androgynous, and also for a lot of people, for our society, androgynous means vaguely male looking. So like people, if any assigned female at birth, non-binary people like don't want to get top surgery and want to keep their chest, they get disrespect for it. They're just like, oh, you're not really non-binary because you're not made uncomfortable by your breasts. And it's like, no.
Dysphoria manifests itself in thousands of different ways, because we know a trans guy who doesn't have a lot of top dysphoria but has a lot of bottom dysphoria. And so he's not bothered by his chest. And that's fine. We don't need, like, that's something else, like, kind of going along with the pushback that I've seen, kind of going backwards, like I was talking about earlier with some of the lesbian community, is that I've also seen a lot of people just saying that you can't be gender nonconforming, basically. It's like, if you're masculine, you're a girl. Oh, wait, nope, sorry. You're a boy. And if you're feminine, you're a girl. And if you're masculine, you have to use he, him pronouns. And if you're feminine, you have to use she, her pronouns. And if you're androgynous, you have to use they, them pronouns. And that's just how it is. I'm like, no, it's not. We can have gender nonconforming people, and they can identify as non-binary. There's a lot of lesbians who do identify as non-binary lesbians, because when you take womanhood and you completely separate the man out of it, gender becomes really difficult, because a lot of our gender a lot of our knowledge about gender has been centered around cis men.
So when you take that completely out of the equation, a lot of lesbians are left wondering, do I really identify as like a woman? And so like a lot of butch lesbians will use he, him pronouns. And there's a huge group of people that are like, if you're a lesbian and you use anything other than she, her pronouns, you're a guy. And it's like, if you go read your history, if you go read some Leslie Feinberg, you would understand that these people, these non-binary lesbian people, these other gender non-conforming people have been around for literally ever. And so we need to like erase those stereotypes of you have to be what you look like. It's just stupid. It just doesn't make any sense. And it's exactly the opposite of what our community is supposed to be doing.
Yeah, something else to touch on with the non-binary community is that, like I said before, they're excluded from a lot of things, and this really heavily includes job applications,
Oh yeah.
IDs, things like that, even like video games and stuff, because the options are male or female. And then, so what does a non-binary person pick? They're supposed to pick their birth gender, but that's not who they are.
And
And
then
then there's tons of places that will say, what gender were you assigned at birth? And that's clearly a trap for trans people. And that's one reason a lot of trans people get their birth certificate changed, so that they can say that they were assigned male at birth if they are a trans guy, so that they don't have to be trapped by this question.
Yeah. And it really is unfortunate too that some of the choices for non-binary people, we kind of have to say, hey, we love you, but don't choose this option, like using the gender X on your driver's license. That can be really dangerous because there's so many bigoted cops that if you get pulled over in somewhere that's a really conservative area and you have an X on your driver's license, you could be in danger. And so it's fortunate that sometimes we do make these options, but you can't even use them because they'll hurt you. And then like, yeah, just like you were saying, Matt, the only time you should, if you're a non-binary person, or a trans person, you would need to disclose your birth gender is sometimes for certain healthcare. Not for all healthcare, for checkups, who cares? Nobody cares. But if you have certain things that like with body parts that you were given at birth and stuff, sometimes and like certain genders are more likely for certain diseases. So sometimes for certain medical things, but other than that, nothing. Like literally nothing.
Yeah, there's no reason for Home Depot to ask me what gender I was assigned at birth.
Yeah.
Depot.
They don't even need to know that if you work there. Like,
right.
What does your ability to work have it doesn't affect, like, your gender does not affect your ability to work whatsoever. Now, I
people want to think that
reasons, like, even if you are a trans man, if you are of a certain age, you should still go in for pap smears, stuff like that. That is a time where you might need to disclose your gender. But if you're going in because you broke your foot,
yeah, they don't need to know.
Why would you need to disclose your gender other than if like there are certain medical things that like affect it, but really for a broken foot, they should be able to set it and let you go. Now, if it's an undisclosed thing, you're having stomach pain, stuff like that, they may need to ask because there are certain parts of the body that are in that region that they'll ask about. But seriously, for certain things, it really isn't necessary. Like they can ask when your last period was without asking your gender. Seriously.
And especially right now, trans people have to be so careful about it because we just had the thing passed that doctors don't have to treat trans people if they don't want to.
Yeah.
Well, and
did you see that New York did get rid of the hospital that's anti-LGBTQ?
I did.
Yeah. So they don't need them anymore. So they said, you're out of here.
Yeah.
You're not welcome because you're a hateful person.
Yep. Yeah. Which I'm just so glad that we are making huge strides towards gender and sexual equality. We still have so far to go. So far. They're like the driver's license thing. We shouldn't have cops that refuse to treat people like human beings. That
Oh
shouldn't
yeah.
be an option to these people. There shouldn't be doctors that can say, well, I don't want to treat you because I'm not comfortable. Then they should have a lawsuit on their hands, but they really don't,
No,
because
they don't get in trouble.
they don't get in trouble, and they should, because they are doctors. They signed up for this. If they are not willing to do it, they should not be a doctor.
Exactly.
If police officers are not willing to treat a trans person with respect, they should not be police officers. Even in the littlest things, like if you bake cakes, you should not be able to refuse a wedding,
Yeah.
because that is your job. And we as Americans put so much weight on working hard, working well, working smart. And these people are betraying American values, and we haven't even faced that as a culture, that these people are completely betraying a completely American values that
Oh
they
yeah.
and they cite when they are bigoted. But what they don't realize is that, in fact, they are the ones that are betraying us culturally, because if we put so much weight on work and they put so much weight on work, then gender shouldn't even come into the question.
Yeah.
They say, well, we don't want to serve you because it's against our religion. But America is based on freedom of religion, so that shouldn't, you know,
Yeah. Gender shouldn't be a part of it.
it really shouldn't be a part of it. And there are so many things that bigoted people cite, and they don't realize that they're kicking themselves in the butt with it.
I know. It's so funny.
Yeah, there are just so many things that are just wrong with our world currently when it comes to gender and sexuality. And it's ridiculous, because we've come a long way, and people are like, isn't that enough? We've come so far. And no, it's not. It
Yeah.
will never be enough until we are all completely equal, men and women. Because it's not just women. Often people say that it's just women that are like bigoted against and stuff like that. They get paid less, but there are so many emotional things that men
Mhm.
have to go through to be men as well.
Which is also unfortunately usually enforced by other men.
Mhm. And that's another thing that we have to face that people don't realize usually. So yeah, this all plays into feminism and how feminism is about equality, and people hate the word feminism right
Oh
now.
yeah.
But really, it's about equality of men and women, which means emotional equality in men and physical equality in women.
Yeah. Yeah, and talking about physical equality with that, I wanted to talk a little bit about gender stereotypes and how it relates to makeup culture. And so wearing makeup and stuff is so forced on women. I see like half a dozen commercials a day about how I need to look better and how I need to anti-age my skin and how I need to look natural, and looking natural uses 30 products and stuff. And something that I've seen a lot recently and over the past few years is a lot of cis, and I'm going to specify cis gay men, getting into the makeup scene, which is incredible. And I'm so glad that more people are allowing, like more men are allowing themselves to be traditionally feminine. But they've also hurt a lot of women, and a lot of women might not even notice that they're being hurt by it. But if you are not a woman, or if you were not assigned female at birth and were raised like as a girl, even though you're not, you were raised like your parents thought you were a girl even though you weren't, you don't know the damage that makeup culture causes. So recently I've seen a lot of cis men on Instagram, and so cis gay men on Instagram being like, I wear makeup for me, you should wear makeup for you, be beautiful, play with this, play with that, wear makeup every day, because it's not to cover up your beauty, it's to enhance your beauty. And I'm like, that's a really good sentiment for you, but you have to understand that it is not that way for people perceived as women and people who were assigned female at birth. Like we have one of our friends who at their schooling has to wear makeup 3 days a week at least, or else they get downgraded. Like they lose points for not wearing makeup. There's a lot of jobs and stuff that they will not like you if you don't wear makeup. You can lose jobs if you don't wear makeup. You can be like so many things, like on TV you see all the time that like a girl isn't wearing makeup for a day and all the other characters are like, oh, are you sick? And like, there's so many things perpetuated against women that you have to wear makeup that I feel like sometimes cis gay men just don't understand. So they don't understand that they're pushing something that's not okay, because wearing makeup as a man is very different than wearing makeup as a woman. It can be similar because some women can get out of that. Like, I don't wear makeup daily. I don't believe in natural makeup because I think that just hurts your self-esteem. I only wear fun, bright makeup, and I never even wear foundation or anything because I think it's harmful to my image of myself. But a lot of women don't see that. I've talked to so many people, they're just like, well, I feel ugly without makeup and I just want to feel beautiful. And they think that's okay, and it's not. So if you're a man, understand that wearing makeup will never be the same for you because you don't have those pressures 100% of the time on you to wear makeup and look beautiful all the time.
Like, be aware that your use of makeup is radical.
Yeah. So Joy just said, be aware that as a man, your use of makeup is radical and it's awesome and I'm so proud of you and it is so cool and it is art for you. But understand that it's not radical for women to wear makeup, and a lot of the time it ends up being oppressive. So that's just another two-way stereotype that I wanted to discuss that people might not understand that is harmful.
Mm-hmm. So we have about 8 minutes left, so I want to touch on one more thing that we had prepared. So this one affects me personally because there's a lot of negative male stereotypes out there that don't have as much effect on women, and a lot of it is, so I grew up hearing all men are disgusting, or all men are always stinky, they don't shower every day, they don't take care of themselves, all men are abusive or rapists or that sort of thing. And that made it really, really hard for me to come out as a man because that's what I grew up hearing. And that's what I would have to fight against if I came out as a man, especially with my own family, because my mom really took those beliefs to heart. And so she really forced those on me. And so when I first came out to her, she said to me, "You'd rather be a gross man than a beautiful woman." And that really hurt. And you can't say those things to your kid who's already struggling to figure out who they are, and then just remind them that they're in a world that hates them.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people end up completely doing things with feminism wrong. Men are not inherently bad. Men are inherently just as good as women. The problem is our socialization, and the problem is our toxic masculinity and stuff. So we need to be attacking those issues instead of specific men, besides the specific men who are bad, but that's, you know what I mean, not attacking the people who haven't done anything wrong, just the people who have been victims of these terrible stereotypes and stuff, because there are things that men do more specifically that do oppress women, but it is not all men, and it is the patriarchy and the overarching system and not each individual man.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no need to completely just hate guys all the time for everything. We need to disengage those systems. I try to do that as best as I can with my little brother and tell him about things and tell him about these things. And I'm like, you do need to stand up for women. It is okay to have emotions. You do need to shower, but that's just because he's 12. And you can be a man and you can take care of yourself, because that's another thing that's really stigmatized, is that I feel like that's a lot of things that women end up doing too. Sometimes they're just like, oh, men are gross and stinky, but then never encouraging self-care for men, and other men will break men down for using basic things like the proper soap and skincare. And so we need to dismantle these stereotypes because they just end up hurting everybody. And there are obviously a lot of things that men as the overarching gender have done wrong, but that's, once again, that's the system and not each individual person.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, with the system, it places men at a higher position, and it's very historical because and it's very European thing, because in Native America, women were held to, it was very much a matriarchy instead of a patriarchy, where women were the ones who were in power. And honestly, their systems were a lot better than the systems we even have today.
Especially because their style of matriarchy was holding women to a very high degree. But what happens a lot of times with patriarchy is like, men are here, men are best, women are disgusting garbage. What I've seen with a lot of historical matriarchies are like, women are great, they're awesome, men are pretty great too, we're all useful, but it just happens to be that the women end up in power. That's seen with most matriarchies. I've not really seen a matriarchy where they're just like, oh, we hate men disgusting, you gross, I hate you. Like, I haven't seen that in the studies of matriarchies that I've seen. But that just happens to be the European patriarchy that we ended up underneath, is that women are here for sex and babies.
Well, and that's kind of the reason that Native America had the matriarchy, was because women were the life givers, so they were deemed as a little more important than the men. But the men were also very important for getting food. So everyone had their use, and it was very equal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have about 3 minutes left, so we're gonna close out. So let's take a look at next week's potential topics. So these are what we have to pick from. This was this week's.
I think this week's talk would flow really nicely into the sexualization and fetishization. I can't ever say that word, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I really hope we'll have Ren next week, because I know that they wanted to talk about that.
Yeah. I'm sure that if we talked about it, they would show up.
Yeah, so I think the kind of stereotypes that we talked about today would be a really nice lead-in into that next week.
All right.
Sounds good to me.
Cool.
All right, so this was Queer Conversations Week 3. Our topic was negative gender stereotypes and how they affect people, and next week we're going to cover sexualization and fetishization.
Cool.
Perfect.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.